Hello there, I do hope you're all well. Right, sorry, no guitar today because what I'm about to show you is going to take quite a long time and I don't want to take too much of your time anyway. But as people who enjoy my channel know very well, I'm a big fan of either James O'Brien or Nick Abbott. And I was no more pleased and happy to find that Nick Abbott got a slot for Sunday night as well, because I enjoy his Friday, Saturday night punch-up politics satires with his cow noises and taking the rise out of our Trumple thin-skinned and our Bodger Johnson. But on Sunday it's more serious and he'll pick topics for serious conversation. And I thought, when it first started doing it, I'm not sure if I'll get into this, but I actually have. And in this clip I'm going to show you, that you're going to listen to, he has a conversation with former Ukipper Suzanne Evans, who's now, in the loosest terms, a political analyst. And on Sunday night, the subject for the hour was this Observer poll that saying that either 52% or 53% or whatever said that Brexit has been bad for the economy and not going so well. And I do subscribe to that mantra that once the facts and evidence change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir? And the thing is, when it comes to Nick Abbott, I think people underestimate him. They just hear his shows on Friday, Saturday night, he does his cow noises and just takes a rise and just acts silly. But underneath on a Sunday, the guy's sharp as a tack. And I think he's somebody who's underestimated when he does interviews. When it comes to, one of my favourites is James O'Brien. When he did Nigel Farage, he did him up like a kipper. Well, actually, it's not hard because Nigel Farage is just a bell end, isn't it? But he's one of these where he's like a bear with a sore head. He will not let things lie. He will just make sure you stay on the question that he wants answering. Whereas Nick Abbott, he does it a little bit more quieter. He has his own little way. He'll have his ducks in a row. And he gave Suzanne Evans the softball question about this Observer poll, and I think she went, oh, well, they've always been against Brexit, so I don't pay too much attention, this and that and the other. They're only interested in the polls that suit what they're up for, you know. So, but he has this way of then, all right, then, well, how about this and how about that and it's you could then the interview just de-escalates into absolute slogans and ridiculous nonsense from Suzanne Evans, because it's not always the first question that you ask that does them in. It's usually the second question. And she goes, because like he asked this question about how well it's doing, and she went, oh, well, throwaway comment it was, well, you know, it's anybody you can bring up people who say it's always going badly, and well, he just went, well, can you name people who say it's going very well? And the pause and the fumbling and bumbling, and then it just de-escalates. I'm not going to say any more because I've already seen the intros going on long enough, but this is just an absolute priceless interview. Enjoy.
If you voted for Brexit, how's it going so far for you? Is it everything you dreamed of? If you voted to remain, are you feeling as though you're stopping yourself from saying, I told you so? Well, our Prime Minister and the French President are, as you just heard, once again at loggerheads over fishing. The Brexit Minister is still trying to have the Northern Ireland Protocol, which he negotiated, changed. And we couldn't buy any petrol the other week as well. Now, a new poll says that nearly twice as many voters think that Brexit has been bad for Britain's economy as the number who think that it's been good for it. The survey was done by the pollster Opinium for yesterday's Observer newspaper, 44% told the survey that leaving the EU had harmed our economy. Only 25% said that it had benefited it. I discussed this earlier with Suzanne Evans. She's a political commentator and the director of the public affairs consultancy Political Insight. She also previously served as the deputy chairman of Ukip and was on the board of the Vote Leave campaign. And I asked if she understands why so many people seem to feel this way about Brexit now.
I think it's really difficult, isn't it? Because, yes, we've got Brexit done, but what happened the moment we got Brexit done is COVID came along. And I think what's happening here is that it's almost impossible now to separate the impact of Brexit from the impact of the government's response to the pandemic, with lockdowns and the huge economic damage that has done. I'm not convinced, to be honest, that anyone can completely extrapolate out one from the other. It's just too complex right now. We haven't really had a chance to reap the benefits of Brexit because the whole global economy, the whole global supply chain has shut down. So whilst I'm sure that The Guardian, which of course The Observer, which took a very anti-Brexit line throughout the EU referendum campaign and of course has used every opportunity since to try and show that Brexit isn't working. I'm sure that it's lovely meat and potatoes and two veg for them. But to be honest, I just don't think it's fair to even ask that question right now, let alone to expect anybody to give a coherent, responsible, lucid, intelligent answer to it.
Yes, I wonder for how long the period in which it is too soon to tell will last.
I think that's a very good question. I mean, I'd be the first to say that Brexit isn't perfect. One of the things that, we always said was there are opportunities of Brexit and it's up to the government to take them. And if you have a government that isn't prepared to take those opportunities, or potentially, as what's happened now, hasn't been able to take those opportunities because the much, much bigger issue of COVID came along, then I think that, it's a fair question. When can we actually start to reap the benefits of Brexit? I don't know. I think the answer to that is when worldwide governments come back to their senses, when they realise that we have to live with COVID. We can't continue to lock people up forever. We can't continue to completely destroy the economy, to keep countries shut, so on and so forth, and all the damaging things that happen because of lockdowns and other travel restrictions and restrictions on our lives. We have to move on from that. We have to accept COVID's going to be with us forever. Then we might perhaps have a chance to start delivering on some of those very promising messages that people like myself were putting out during the referendum campaign. The ability to trade with other countries, the ability to divest ourselves of red tape which holds back economic growth. We simply haven't had the opportunity yet.
Okay, well, we were trading with other countries when we're in the EU, and red tape has done nothing but increase on the outside of the EU. But taking all of that, and I understand why you would be disinclined to believe anything that is printed in the Observer, how about the UK's fiscal watchdog, which says that Brexit is going to hurt the economy more than the coronavirus pandemic? They said that leaving the European Union is going to reduce the size of the British economy by 4%. The pandemic will reduce it by a further 2%, twice as bad as COVID.
Yeah, well, you're talking about the figures that we've had this week from the Office of Budget Responsibility. I have to say, I saw that report come out and my jaw just hit the floor. Really, I mean, it was such a biased piece of work. It's really not credible. Now, I understand that the OBR can't really forecast anything. Very often, it can barely get a 3-month forecast right. So how on earth it can forecast this for the long term, which interestingly, I noted in that report wasn't really defined as any specific period of time. It was this kind of like vague future idea that Brexit's going to cause harm to the economy. Well, you can't really. It wasn't even a sensible forecast from my point of view. But of course, the other thing that the OBR didn't do was take into account any of the potential benefits of Brexit. None whatsoever. The kind of things that I've just been talking about, the potential benefit of doing free trade deals with countries outside the European Union, beefing up our presence on the world stage, cutting red tape, bureaucracy, being able to grow the economy.
Yes.
The OBR took none of that into consideration whatsoever.
Okay. All right. So I can understand why you wouldn't want to believe the Observer and you wouldn't want to believe predictions about what might happen in the future. What about the organisation representing UK manufacturers, which said there are no benefits as a result of Brexit? Make UK is the organisation.
Yeah,
they say that it's currently hard for manufacturers to see any advantages from leaving the EU, and the organisation warns that exports to the bloc could become a permanent problem if the government doesn't step in, which it seems disinclined to do.
Well, again, we just simply haven't had any opportunities because of COVID, because of lockdowns, because of global international supply chain problems. I think a lot of, and I think going back to the Observer poll, people can only be polled and answer questions on issues that they are told about. And unfortunately, I think there has been a push by much of the media to try and, for instance, blame the shortage of HGV drivers on Brexit and ignore the fact and not put into the public domain the actual truth, which is that Germany also has a massive, for one example, has a massive shortage of HGV drivers. It's short of between 45,000 and 65,000.
But there's 100 million people live in Germany, and we have over 100,000 driver shortages in this country with about 65 million.
Okay, yeah, absolutely we do. But, you can also lay some of the blame to that at the feet of government as well. 40,000 HGV driver tests were cancelled because of COVID in the past 18 months. There is a 56,000 backlog of vocational driving licences sitting in the DVLA, not going anywhere because of COVID.
Right.
You can't blame Brexit for this.
Okay, all right.
You might want to blame Brexit for the fact that the combination of Brexit and COVID did indeed lead to some HGV drivers going back to their original homes in EU countries. But I'm sorry, this kind of blanket idea that Brexit is responsible for everything, when we've had a massive pandemic which has left our country 2.2 trillion in debt, the highest level of debt to GDP ratio we've had since the Second World War.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's just completely unrealistic.
But you are decrying a blanket explanation that some of these problems are to do with Brexit, while giving the blanket explanation that none of it's to do with Brexit because you can't distinguish between it and COVID.
No, I don't think I said that at all. In fact, I think I said earlier in this interview that, that perhaps the government hasn't handled things as well as it could have done. And I'd absolutely say that's the truth. I don't believe this government has taken advantage of Brexit as it could have done. I think some of that is because of the pandemic, but certainly not all of it.
Okay, well, we've been through the Observer. That you didn't like that. You don't like predictions of what might happen in the future. The manufacturers are perhaps misinformed about what it is that ails their businesses. How about the Wall Street Journal? They have compared our upswing in trade with our nearest competitors and found us wanting. The global upswing in trade, says the Wall Street Journal, is leaving the UK behind in what they say is an early sign of the challenge that Brexit is presenting to the economy.
Well, that's just one opinion, isn't it? There are plenty of other measures which suggest that actually our economy is going to do rather better
a prediction.
than other world economies.
A prediction about what might happen in the future.
You seem to be the fan of those, not me. But you can't say on the one hand that one prediction is right and another prediction isn't. You take your pick and make your choice accordingly. My point is very firmly that no, I would absolutely agree. We have not taken advantage of Brexit, not by any means. There is still a hell of a lot of work to do, and I, for one, look forward to the day, as I said, when we can put COVID behind us and actually get on with the job of getting Brexit done in a way that is beneficial for the nation.
Okay, the Observer, predictions about the future from the government's own organisation, manufacturers, the Wall Street Journal. How about the Food and Drink Federation, which shows that food and drink exports to the EU were down 16% on the same period in the previous year. That's down by over a quarter compared to the first half of 2019. Meat and dairy products have been worst hit. We know about the fish industry and the problems that they're having. So the manufacturing business is telling us that it's ruinous, and so is the food business.
Well, we could, I'm sure, both sit here for the rest of the evening and come up with a long list of people who think Brexit's been good, and a long list of people who think Brexit has been bad. And
is there a long list of people that think that Brexit's been? I mean, I've given you a long list of people that think it's bad. Do you have any that think it's good?
Well, I haven't, I'm sure there are. I mean, the fact is our economy, despite everything that's happening, is actually doing significantly better than some other European economies. And overall, it's doing better.
Name the economy that's doing better then.
It's doing better than the Eurozone. I mean, okay, we have a problem here with growing inflation, but you look, for instance, in Germany, inflation is accelerating at a faster pace than it is here. So it is in Spain as well. I think it's up as far as 5.5% in Spain. So we must be doing something right.
Well, the UK stands out for the weakness of its recovery in trade. So says the Wall Street Journal. Export volumes at the end of July 16% lower than the end of 2019. At the same time, in the US, exports were only 4% lower and imports were 7% higher. Our imports are flat. Our exports are 16% lower. The US is 4% lower, a quarter as bad as us. Euro area exports were flat, and imports were up 2%. So by every measure, really, that I can see, we're doing worse than America, worse than Europe, worse than all of our major competitor countries. And I ask again, I have more of these, but I'm running out of time. I've given a long list of organisations that say that Brexit is ruinous, but your answer to my question, do you have a list of those that say that it's beneficial? You said there might well be, or words to that effect.
Well, you've obviously sat down before this interview and thought, I'm just going to come up with a long list of things to chuck at Suzanne Evans. I'm not the government. Maybe you could ask government ministers that question. I'm somebody who campaigned to leave. And my argument was always, and I think 52% of the population voted for leave, not just on economic grounds, on the contrary. In fact, for many people, the economic arguable benefits of being in the single market, for instance, were not actually why they ticked that box on their referendum paper. We voted to take back control. That was the main thrust of the EU referendum campaign. It was about not being let me finish. It was about not being beholden to bureaucrats in Brussels. And in fact, in every poll that we did with Vote Leave, the economic we were told, weren't we? We had Project Fear. Everyone from the Bank of England, Bank of England's Mark Carney, to the IFS, so everybody lined up and told us that Brexit was going to be bad for us economically. But the fact is,
but it is. It wasn't Project Fear.
Because that wasn't their main concern.
Yeah, not Project Fear. Project Fact, surely. That was Suzanne Evans talking to me earlier, and I appreciate her time. That was an invigorating chat. She was previously the Deputy Chairman of Ukip and is now the Director of the Public Affairs Consultancy Political Insight, as well as a political commentator.
Absolutely right, This idea that they pushed about how bad it was going to be, saying it was Project Fear, is now Project Fact. But, even when the weight of the evidence just made her look an absolute clown that she is, didn't move, and all she was left with was pointless, meaningless slogans like take back control, control our borders and whatnot. It was absolutely brilliant interview, it was. An absolutely top-class interview. And it just shows you that sometimes, if you've got your ducks in a row, you don't have to say anything, just allow them to dig the hole that they're in ever deeper, and when they realise they cannot get out of this hole that they're in, and all that's left is meaningless slogans. It was absolutely priceless interview, and I thought Nick Abbott was brilliant. Anyway, I'm going to keep this finish of the video short and sweet because it's got to be going on long enough. So I shall bid you farewell, and till the next time, take care.